Welcome to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. And now your host, Tim Johnson.
The construction industry is the cornerstone of our economy. Unfortunately, there are scam artists. The Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors protects the general public and the integrity of the construction industry. Michael McDuff, Executive Director of the LSLBC, joins us when we return on this edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Since 1919, we've designed and constructed hundreds of industrial plants, roads, ships, dams, and executed some of the most complex jobs in the world. In fact, our quality and dependability are legendary. Today, the legend continues as Brown & Root delivers engineering, construction, maintenance, and industrial specialty services throughout the U.S. and the world from our headquarters here in Louisiana. We are Brown & Root.
In Baton Rouge, see your Good Neighbor State Farm agent Brady Flavin for your insurance and financial needs.
For over a quarter century, Kelly's has operated with honesty, integrity, and above all, safety. Kelly's features a fleet of quality equipment operated by dedicated, safety-minded employees skilled in land clearing, above-ground right-of-way maintenance, vegetation control, station yard and manned facility maintenance, above-ground pipeline support, and more. Kelly's Industrial Services, where pipeline right-of-way maintenance gets done right.
Consumers and property owners with construction projects can have a successful result or regretful experiences that could have been avoided. Before any construction project, verify licensure of the contractor and check references. Scammers will claim to be insured or bonded, so always check first. Download our app, LA Contractor, from the Android or Apple Store. Visit our website, lacontractor.org, or contact the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors. We're here to help before things go wrong. Hire a licensed contractor. It's the law.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Very pleased to be joined by my longtime friend and the Executive Director of the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors, Michael McDuff. Buddy, welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. Let's talk a little bit about the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors. I mentioned in the show open that unfortunately there are some scam artists out there. Your job is really to protect the integrity of the industry and the general public. So let's talk a little bit about the history first of the LSLBC and then a little bit about your mission.
Thank you, Tim. And the State Licensing Board for Contractors is a state agency that was initiated back in 1956. A very great gentleman from the Baton Rouge area, Mr. Preston Eggers. He was the director of Associated General Contractors, and as a leader of the construction industry, the industry knew that there needed to be an organization and a state agency to protect the public and the integrity of the construction industry, and that was accomplished in 1956, and it's been in existence since that point in time.
Now you're governed by a board, obviously, folks that are represented from the construction industry, some appointed by the governors, others that are fill the roles in different ways. Talk a little bit about that board and some of the leadership, guys like Andy Dupuy of Brown & Root, others.
It's a great licensing board, people that are leaders of the construction industry. Current chairman is Lee Mallett. From the Lake Charles area, our vice chairman is William Cluott, as you know, who's a good friend
Cajun,
of
right?
Andy Dupuy, but he works with Cajun Industries. But they're representatives of the Associated General Contractors, Associated Builders and Contractors, and other trade organizations that nominate an appointment to the governor's office. And they are there to represent the industry that they represent, but also as far as the enforcement section to protect the public.
It really is a unique setup. You and I are going to talk about our common work background, Associated Builders and Contractors, in just a few minutes. But one of the things that marks the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors is that you have these individuals that come in. They're generally business owners, executives within these organizations. They may compete with one another fiercely outside of the doors of the licensing board, but when they're there, they're in meetings, they're representing that organization, their primary interest is what you said, the mission, protecting the general public and protecting the integrity of the industry. Talk about how they come together and work together and how refreshing that is.
It is, and that's the great thing is you and I have always, we've talked about the great things of the construction industry. These folks that represent the licensing board, they're there twice a month for administrative hearings to deal with the unlicensed complaints from consumers and for the licensing enforcement. And they come together and they believe in their job to protect the public, but also to protect the integrity of the industry, and that's extremely refreshing for people that serve.
We're going to talk about the scam artists and some of the bad actors that are out there later in the show, and we don't want to spend a lot of time on that because we really want to focus on the positive things that take place. The construction industry is so critically important to this state, to this country, to the nation. I do a lot of work with the NCCER, as you know, the National Center for Construction Education and Research. But you and I first met back in the mid-90s when I was hired to come aboard and work on the staff of the Associated Builders and Contractors here in Baton Rouge, the Pelican chapter. You were a mentor of mine. We became great friends, but we shared some awesome times there working with those industry leaders in that association to work on governmental relations issues, to work on workforce development issues. Talk about your time as a staff person there at ABC and some of the things it's taught you and what it's meant to your career.
And you and I, both as young men, and our opportunity to work with the contractors in Louisiana, but also nationally, that when you have these contractors that come together, they compete viciously, and that would come into a meeting, and all swords went down, and they were there to work together on what the needs of the industry, the clients, and the owners were. And when these contractors come together and identify what the common objectives and mission are, these folks, you and I have seen great things happen, that egos and personalities set aside, that these leaders of this industry, that it was phenomenal. And over the years, we've seen the training centers that have been designed, built, and staffed, and for the workforce in Louisiana, for the safety and skills training, that for this industry, the construction industry, that is a phenomenal thing to see and to learn as young people.
You think about some of the titans of particularly the industrial construction industry that we had the great pleasure of working with: Bert Turner, Roland Toops, Turner Industries, Don McAllister, Art Favre, Eddie Risponi, Andy Dupuy, we talk about often.
Lane Grigsby.
Lane Grigsby, obviously a prominent figure. Jay Rush, somebody who maybe not as prominent, but who played a critical role. Kenny Freeman at Petron.
Yes.
Just the list goes on and on and on of those people that we got to work with and got to learn from. Talk about some of the memories and some of the efforts from the political standpoint, some of the things you did. I know how important it has been to you in your life and your family, quite frankly.
Well, and I appreciate that. But as you and I know, this goes back to the mid-'80s, the workforce issue, and we talk about it today. The workforce concerns was an issue back in the mid-'80s. And these gentlemen that we've mentioned as team members of Associated Builders and Contractors and other trade organizations realized they had to do something to provide the safety and skills training for the workforce and the lack of workforce because of the retirement age of people in this industry. The issues are one and the same today as they were 30 plus years ago. But to see people that come together as a team and identify what the issues are and how they can work together. We need more of that today in private sector, but also in state government. That would be a great thing to see more of, but we've been so fortunate to be part of that.
Well, it was a wonderful time in my career. I know a wonderful time in your career. I still count many of those individuals as mentors and friends, and I'm blessed to call them friends. Let's take a break. We come back. I want to talk a little bit about, unfortunately, some of the fraud that does take place and some of the things you guys see and some of the regulations and stances you have to take to protect the industry and to protect the general public. We're visiting with Michael McDuff. He's the Executive Director of the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Spadel's Florist was founded over 30 years ago. From my mom's kitchen, we have grown into one of the largest florists in this area. There's a sense in our community that you stick together, good times or bad. And oil and gas is part of that family. They're my neighbors, they're my customers, they're the person I'm sitting next to at church. If oil and gas is doing well, all of our businesses are doing well. We are Louisiana Oil and Gas.
For more than 25 years, the TJC Group has been helping industry communicate and build relationships with communities, elected officials, and governmental agencies. We are the leading firm in the U.S. for the development, management, and facilitation of industry-based community advisory panels.
Whether you're building a new facility or you manage an existing business, let us put our community and governmental relations experience to work for you.
The TJC Group, facilitating solutions for business and industry.
It might be one of the most efficient, most effective methods of communications we've ever used.
What if I said that the American dream is alive and well, and that it exists for anyone willing to build it? That the power of a nation does not reside in its monuments, but in the hearts and minds of those who built them, and that the country's greatest heroes also wear hard hats. In today's America, it's not enough to dream about the future. You have to build it. Build your future at byf.org.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. We're visiting with Michael McDuff. He's the Executive Director of the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors. We sort of reminisced in the first segment about our common background, associated builders and contractors, some of the great contractor leaders that we've had the great pleasure of working with and for over the years. But one of the things I say all the time as I travel around the country and I speak to different groups is that one of the things I believe that marks Louisiana is the great abundance of contractor talent that is resident in this state, that is headquartered in this state, both commercial and industrial. You think about some of the Lemoynes, the Maps, the Bouquet and LeBlancs. If you think on the industrial side about Cajun and Turner and Brown and Root now and Shaw formerly, CB&I, and all these different performance contractors, industrial specialty contractors, just great local talent. Talk about, you travel around the country too, and so you see the construction industry from a great perspective as well. Talk about how talented this local contractor community actually is.
It is, and when you, not just the commercial and industrial sector, but we have a great residential sector.
Home builders, exactly.
And so the entire industry, we have the great talent and the skill sets to be excellent in this industry. Other segments of the country that I've seen, it's far less. And as an example, as you and I know, the major work going on in Southwest Louisiana, and with one project at Saucil that is 20 billion plus or minus, it's a huge project. But when you look at the major scopes of work that are being done, it's all Louisiana contractors. It is performance contractors, it's Bow Brothers, it's ISC Electric, it's Cajun Industries. It's fantastic. A lot of large, huge projects like that, when they're done, we see people from all over the world, and we've seen it before. And even previously, we saw other major contracts where our contractors, local contractors, have the skills, they have the workforce, they have everything needed to do that work. And A lot of these guys work all over the country and do it very well in the industry.
Well, and you and I have gotten to have an upfront first row seat to see a lot of that over the years. Now, we talk about all that wonderful talent. We talk about all these people that do it the right way. They do it correctly. But unfortunately, there are, as your commercials indicate and as we talk about, there are scam artists out there.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the primary roles that the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors plays, and that is sort of ferreting out those con artists, those scam artists, and making sure that they don't affect the general public. Talk about that work a little bit and some of the bad actors that you've seen over the years.
And, you know, Tim, that's the side I've never seen until I left the private sector to this job. But it's real. It's real in Louisiana. It's a reality across the country as far as contractor fraud, that the unlicensed activities, it's rampant. A real sad thing is elder abuse throughout the nation, and this deals primarily in the residential sector, that consumers that have no real idea of how to deal with contractors, and when they're doing work with their homes, with their money, their biggest concern is about price. And as we do consumer education, we try and inform to the consumers, if you're looking purely at the cheapest price, sometimes you get what you pay for. But very often the consumers in the residential sector, when people come knock on the door and offer their services to do work, and they have a business card that has no physical address and is purely a cell phone, be careful. And that's what we see all over the place, that consumers have to take a pause and verify the license before you have work at your home, to check references. Again, because the licensing board cannot be behind closed doors throughout the state.
Can't be everywhere.
Cannot be everywhere. And as a state regulatory agency, that is not what we can do or should do. Really, the public has to, we're here to help them protect themselves and to give them the guidance that they need, how to very simply verify the license, use our website, use a mobile app, and to do the things they need to do, their own due diligence, again, because cheap price is not always the best route.
Got about 2 minutes left in this segment. One of the things you guys talk about in a lot of your advertisements is if an offer seems too good to be true, it probably is. And at that point, you ought to stop. You ought to go to the LSLBC website. You ought to call the office, and you ought to, as you say, verify licensures, because that licensure, that license, it at least does something to ensure minimum standards. We got about 40 seconds left. Let's talk about those minimum standards and the critical importance of having a license.
And the competency to apply and to be licensed in Louisiana, it is to make sure that the competency is there, that the insurance, workers' compensation, general liability, and we also do financial background checks to make sure that those that are trying to be in the business of contracting have no final judgments or no damages that can be done to consumers. And that is a big focus of what we do.
You know, one of the things, I got about 30 seconds left here, but you know, if our good friend that we mentioned earlier, Lane Grigsby, was here, he was saying in a perfect free enterprise system, there would be no need for a licensure board. But we know that there is, and we've seen it. And representatives of his organization actually serve on the board. And so you've seen it firsthand how critically important it is to have an organization protecting the public. Give us 15 seconds on some of the things you've seen.
I've seen that the commercial and industrial sector as an industry regulate itself very well. The residential sector needs a lot of help on the licensing and regulation, because consumers dealing with residential builders, that's a very difficult issue for the consumers.
It's critically important. We're going to take a break. We come back. I want to talk about some of the other initiatives you and the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors might be engaged in. We're visiting with Michael McDuff. He's the Executive Director of the LSLBC. And you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
For more than 20 years, the TJC Group has been helping companies assess their training needs and to develop programs that improve the effectiveness and productivity of their teams.
Training doesn't have to be expensive or complicated. Let us put our experience and expertise to work for you.
The TJC Group, facilitating solutions for business and industry.
It might be one of the most efficient, most effective methods of communications we've ever used.
Tim Johnson here for Gulf Coast Occupational Medicine. With some of the most knowledgeable and hardest working medical professionals in Louisiana and 8 convenient locations in Greater Baton Rouge, Gulf Coast provides injury management, physical exams, medical surveillance, and substance abuse testing. Once you know the folks at Gulf Coast, you'll realize they are your best option to protect your safety record and your bottom line. Gulf Coast Occupational Medicine. Ride the wave to safety.
What if I said that whatever good things you build you? And that in this economy, sweat never loses its value? What if I said that there isn't a challenge in the world too great for a craft professional with the right tools? And that the steps that lead from where you are to where you want to be can only be built by you? Build your future at byf.org.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Good conversation with my friend, the Executive Director of the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors, Michael McDuff. We talked a little bit in the last segment about how you regulate and try to work against the bad actors that might be out there. And so you're critically important in terms of the mission, as we talked about, protecting the integrity of the industry, protecting the general public. But you're involved in so much more than just that. The Licensing Board for Contractors does a great job in being engaged in education at all levels. So let's talk about that educational engagement. Let's start with some of the work around higher education.
And again, higher education, it's so critically important to the state. It needs help from not only this industry, but a lot of other industries. And I'm proud of the construction industry because we have done a lot since before my time with the Contractors Licensing Board. When we enforce the licensing laws and we levy fines and penalties for unlicensed activities in Louisiana, those fines are not to generate our agency. Those fines go to the Construction Education Trust Fund, which goes directly to higher education for accredited construction management programs. And over the course of the past 20 plus years, millions and millions of dollars have gone to higher education, and those programs with construction management, they greatly appreciate what we do, but they appreciate the industry. And again, this is leaders of the construction industry. Several years ago, Mr. Ken Knockhand with Associated General Contractors.
Great friend, great guy in the construction industry.
Absolutely.
For 30 plus years.
We partnered, and he initiated a piece of legislation in 2013 that ties the voluntary contributions of licensing renewals to higher education. And Tim, in the past year, we raised voluntarily, easily, a lot of money that goes directly to higher education. Proud of that for the construction industry.
It's critically important, particularly as you mentioned, in these times of de-investment in higher education in our state. But you're also engaged in a pretty significant way in construction craft workforce development. For instance, Ken Knockhand, Al Bargas, many of your current and former board members sit on the board of the Louisiana Construction Education Foundation that my firm is involved with. And AGC and that Contractors Trust Fund makes a substantial contribution to the Louisiana Construction Education Foundation every year to be used to serve programs to develop construction craft professionals in underemployed, unemployed, minority type communities. Absolutely. And so that work that you guys do and taking that money and saying, we're not trying to build some empire here. Nope. We want to give it back to the industry. We want to take the money from the bad actors and help to sustain the industry. That's really the mission of the money and the donations that you make, right?
You and I learned that as young people, to give back, and the mentors in the construction industry that were so involved. And the mission was give back to the industry. What you give back, you receive. And the industry has received a great deal, but the state of Louisiana and the public, particularly in higher education today, they're gaining a lot from this industry.
It's a real tribute to the leadership that the Contractors Licensing Board has, great leadership that it's had over the years, and obviously the work that you do as well. Let's talk about another organization that you're pretty heavily engaged with, NASCLA. Give us what that acronym stands for, and then let's give an overview of your work with NASCLA, and then I want to talk specifically about reciprocity and state-by-state licensing and some of the work you're doing there.
NASCLA is a lot of letters, but what it stands for is the National Association of State Contractor Licensing Agency. It's contractor licensing boards around the country, and this licensing board back in the 60s initiated NASCLA. The real objective here is for licensing and regulatory boards for contractors around the nation to network, share information, share data.
Best practices.
How we work, and the biggest thing that we're an advocate for from Louisiana is reciprocity. We have contractors that work all over the country, so major contractors throughout the nation. From a regulatory board, we have to understand that we should not overregulate and make it burdensome for contractors. Licensing is important to the contractors. However, we need to simplify and streamline as much as possible, because again, the legitimate licensed contractors throughout the country, that's not our problem. The problem is with all of the unlicensed, untaxed, unregulated people in this industry.
Let's take the good actors and let them manage their business, and let's focus our time and effort and energy in tracking down those bad actors. Now, we got about 30, 40 seconds left here. This whole idea of the NCCER and their certification providing some reciprocity toward licensing, I know that's something you're thinking about. Give us 30 seconds on that.
It's the National Center for Construction Education and Research, which you're very involved with, and the leaders there, Steve Green and Don White, great people. And that's an industry-wide initiative, and it's not just ABC, it's AGC, it's unions, it's non-union, but the entire industry getting together and helping on those initiatives. And I believe that for the licensing regulatory agencies, we should be helping the contractors on how to use those tools that are provided.
And not make them have to retest in every single state. That's something we'll come back and talk about more. Listen, it's been great fun for me to have you here today. You and I have been friends for years, and I really do appreciate the work you're doing and the work of the Contractors Licensing Board. Michael McDuff, thank you for your time today.
Good to see you.
Always good to see you too. Tell your family I said hello.
I will.
That's a wrap, guys. Join us again next week at this very same time for another edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.